Welcome to One in the Shibal with Susie and Ed.
We're just two Asian Americans talking shit about shit. Hey, man.
Whew.
Sorry, I'm busy.
It's in contrast to last week when we recorded at night. We're recording. It's not even that early, but I had to wake up early to get here, and I don't know why I'm so tired.
I'm a morning person, so I'm like, good morning.
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock, I'm like, but at this time, I'm great. I've already gone up. I got up. I worked out. Took the kids to camp. Did all kinds of stuff.
We texted you on the way here. We're like 10 minutes behind, and I said to Ron, I was like, I bet, and you were like, oh, great, yeah. And I was like, I bet it's not the same though, because she didn't just wake up. She's probably late a little bit from coming from the gym or something.
Well, I had to get up and go early to the gym so I could get the girls to camp. But before they had to go to camp, I had to make them breakfast and their snack, and so I had to do all that before you probably woke up, which is fine. We're just different, and that's okay. Because I can't be up past 10 o'clock. After 10 o'clock.
Well, no wonder, because you wake up so early.
Yeah, like 5:30.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I even said to Ron today for some reason, and again, we didn't even wake up that late. I actually wake up earlier, but I have to lay in bed for an hour.
Coax yourself out of bed.
Wake up. You know what I mean? But when I have to alarm and get out of bed, I'm like, and I was saying to Ron, I was like, there was a time when I used to have to go to, when I worked at Red Bull, when I used to have to be there by 7.
Oh, that's...
Which meant I had to wake up at 5:30, and I was like, I don't know how I used to do that every day. How was your week? Busy.
Always so busy. Summer is always really busy. The girls are both in volleyball camp, and they're doing great, and they love it, but my husband also has his friend in town with his 2 kids. My niece also happens to be in town right now, so I'm just splitting time with a million different things, which is great. But, there's no downtime. There hasn't been any downtime for me for this entire week, which is fine. I like to keep busy, but when you have out-of-town guests, it can be a lot. It can be a lot.
Yeah.
And he's got kids. And I'm just going to be honest. I'll be honest. I am one of 3 girls. I have daughters. The majority of my nieces in my family are girls. We have 1 boy. I'm not a boy mom, I think, for a reason.
What?
Because our friend, he has a son and a daughter, and his son is 9, and boys are just different. They're always in motion. There's always some kind of noise and commotion wherever they go. And not to say it's all boys, and it's not to say all girls, but it's just constant. And I'm just oh, so much.
Yeah, we are a lot.
It's so much. And he's the sweetest boy. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's really well behaved. He's a good boy, but wherever boys go, there's just a lot of noise. And so, and it's just sit down, stop moving for a second.
It's like Archie kind of.
Yes, right. And so I'm constantly, look at this, let's go here, do this. So exactly.
People always talk about how expensive girls daughters are, and I'm like, yeah, maybe at an earlier age, and I'm sure even in adult age too, but boys as they get older, they get expensive
because you have to constantly distract them and keep them occupied.
Yeah, and the stuff that they need to be distracted, even buying a PlayStation or an Xbox, hundreds of dollars.
I think girls are expensive too, just in a different
they
way.
are. Yeah.
God, they're so fucking. Kids are expensive in
and
general.
at different times. Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
For sure. But also, didn't your youngest have something good for her happen at volleyball camp? Did we talk about that last week?
So my youngest daughter, she just started. This is her first volleyball camp. And she, of course, wants to emulate her older sister and do what her sister does and play club, and she really wants to do well. So she's actually in camp right now because she's preparing for tryouts, which are in September. She's 10.
Tryouts for school?
For club.
Oh, for club.
School, it's kind of you're just in.
Yeah.
If you want to play, you play. But club, you have to be chosen. And so she's I really want to make a good team. I really want to do well. And so she went to club, and there's 3 groups, and the older girls are in the top group, and then the younger girls who are all new are split between 2 groups, and it's by skill. And they moved her from the first group, which is kind of the least skillful, and then they moved her up to the more skilled group.
She was the only one in her age group.
Only one in her age group to move up. I was so excited for her. She was just I got to move. And I was the only one because they saw me serving, and I was she's so proud of herself, and it was really exciting for her. So I'm really happy that, and they love it. My older daughter woke up and she's oh God, I love volleyball so much. I'm this is the best. Being a volleyball mom or a sports mom, you really have to toe the line and remind yourself that this isn't for you. right? Like I'm constantly like, this isn't for you. You're not living vicariously through your kid.
Yeah.
Like, please, like, calm it down. So to know that they really love it and love it on their own and they don't love it for me is even more gratifying because I know that they're doing it for themselves and not because they want to please me, because that's the last thing I want is for them to just do this because they think I'll be happy.
Yeah. Or because you forced them to.
Right.
Yeah,
there is no force at all. Anyway, how was your week? You've been busy this week too. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're at a rally, you're at a signing of a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, I just want to say, actually, why don't you tell them what you did, and then I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah, so there was a rally for Yong Yang, and the family asked me to join. They call it the executive team for Justice for Yong Yang.
Do you want to explain who Yong Yang is?
Yeah, so Yong Yang, he was a Korean-American man. He had just celebrated his 40th birthday with his twin brother. And on May 2nd, he had a schizophrenic episode. And he was like having his schizophrenic hallucinations. So his parents called the Department of Mental Health directly. They didn't call 911. They didn't do any of that.
They did the right thing.
Yeah. And then when the Department of Mental Health guy came, he only had an interaction with Yong through the door for less than like 45 seconds. And he wasn't even the front-facing person. He was standing behind the father who was there, guiding the whole, trying to mediate the whole thing. And, Yong basically was like, I don't want you in here. Get out, get out. And I don't know what this guy's problem was, if he wasn't trained enough, whatever it is. He decided to call 911 and tell them that this man was, quote, very violent, even though nothing violent happened.
He didn't start banging on the door from the inside.
And no. And anyone who knows, Young basically was like, I don't know who you are. You're not coming in here.
Yeah.
He also,
which is actually fair.
Yeah.
It's totally reasonable.
Right. And then he calls them. So the police arrive and they're basically at first make it seem like they're there to help him with the 5150, which is when you call to get someone into a psychiatric hold for 72 hours for evaluation, things like that. But then the police, while they are strategizing outside, they decide to start telling the father that the only way we can really do this is if we treat it as a trespassing thing, which it's not. He wasn't trespassing.
I don't understand.
Right. So the police immediately were like, oh, we don't really care about mental health. We do criminality.
But the thing is the mental health guy was there. Why was
and
what
anyone,
is that training?
Anyone who does mental health work in the crisis situations knows that the biggest thing you have to do, be in consideration of, is time.
Yes.
It takes time to talk someone off a ledge, to talk someone into trusting you.
I don't know you. I'm having a fucking mental crisis.
Which is exactly what happened, right? And this guy didn't do either. There was no empathy. There was no time. There was nothing. You know what I mean? Which is great. Which is wild.
Two things you need the most of.
Right. Which is what you should be trained in. And so then the police, they try to talk to Young through the door. And the father at this point, he doesn't really understand what trespassing means, because they were like, we might have to put hands on your son and be rough with him, is about what they said. Hands on your son was literal. That's verbatim what they said. So the dad's like, yeah, sure. I don't know what
I want him to be safe.
Yeah.
Is what you have to do.
Right.
That's what you have to do.
So then they knock on the door, they talk to him, and Young's saying things that doesn't make sense. He says things like, I've died multiple times already. I don't want to die again. And then, he's basically stating that he doesn't even recognize that he's at his parents' house, or that, that his parents are there. So the police, immediately after he says these things that don't make sense, they say to him, well, your parents are worried about you. Do you understand that? They asked someone who was saying incoherent things if he understands it. So they're literally invalidating mental health, schizophrenia, any of that. You know what I mean?
Obviously in crisis.
Yep. So then they, but even before that, their sergeant comes and she's telling someone hey, who's going to be my less lethal person, to use beanbags, things like that, tasers. But before that, one of the officers, who I believe was one of the first people called on the scene, says, I'm going to be the primary, which means that I'm going to be the first person going in. That person has a history at least one time shooting a person in a mental health crisis. So why is that person allowed to even be the primary in another
Why
mental
is
health
he
call?
there at all?
Right. So then they have the dad's key because, again, he doesn't really understand what their intentions are because they're telling him, like, we might have to put hands on your son,
Does the
not
father
shoot
speak
him.
English fluently?
Yeah, pretty fluently.
Okay.
And also, like, in order to be able to have a trespassing case, like, the father has to say they are trespassing and let them know. You know what I mean? But he doesn't ever do that. So for them to use that as a thing also doesn't make sense. So either way, they have the keys, they open the door, and Young is terrified. You know what I mean? And you can see on the body cam footage that the police released, they actually released it really quickly because, like, a lot of times you don't see body cam footage for like a month, if not a year. You know, they released it immediately, and they even like slow mo it and then freeze frame it when he opens the door, and they like circle the fact that he had a kitchen knife in his hand. And I think in the police's mind, they're like, "Oh,
this validates everything that happened."
Yeah. But if you really don't listen to the police's narrative and you just watch the video for what it is, it's none of that. Because they say that he lunged at them. He doesn't. He has a look of fear on his face. And not that this validates what happened to other people, but I've seen other cases where like the people look like
they're going to attack.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Young didn't have that. He looked terrified. Like his eyes were like this, his like face is pushed back, and he literally has his so like he has a knife in his left hand and his other hand is literally going like this. Stop.
Right.
And then you can tell that he looks like he's going towards the door to try to close it because he's trying to create a barrier. Well, the primary officer, his name is Andres Lopez, decided to shoot him 3 times, and Young basically dies almost instantly, you know? And there was no like, why is the lethal force the primary? You know what I mean? Like, why is there no riot shields involved?
Or like you shoot a beanbag at somebody,
right?
They're gonna, you know.
Or close the door, or just turn around and go down the stairs, because it was a 2nd floor apartment and they were like in the stairway hallway. You know what I mean? So it wasn't this like long hallway of apartments. It was like a house apartment.
Right. But the first issue was that they didn't take the time to try to you know, bring the temperature down in the situation.
And invalidated mental health.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like the first line of defense would have been somebody who was like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's see what's going on. What's going on with you? How can we help you? Like, not like, open the door, you're trespassing, like, or like whatever. The approach for people who are having mental health crises and the police has always been just this volatile, you know, combination. Especially
we have better things to do, us versus them.
Right. Especially when people of color are involved, Black people and, you know, non-Black, you know,
the
non-white
darker
people
your
are
skin
involved.
color, the higher the chance of death.
Right. And I think that and also just this misunderstanding with the father of like, we're going to put hands on your son is like, well, what does that even mean?
Right.
Because hands don't mean bullets.
Nope.
Hands don't mean bullets. And like, I you know, I don't know. I think, you know, that's anyway. So,
and the statistics are there. You know what I mean? A quarter of police kills are mental health crises, and like the people that are shot. And then of those, 67% of those then end in death.
Yeah.
But then, like, you know, the parents, the family, you know, he even has a twin brother. They are looking for justice, but not only that, but, you know, they're like, this shouldn't happen to anyone. This shouldn't have happened to our family member, but it shouldn't happen to anyone again. So they also want systemic change.
Good.
So they put together a group of people to try to help. You know, there's a lot of community leaders. There's this woman named Carrie who runs like the Asian Mental Health Project to get like mental health resources for Asian Americans, you know, in the LA community especially. And she lives like 3 or 4 doors down.
You're kidding.
From where it happened.
Did she know them before that?
She didn't, but she saw the police commotion that day. So she was like kind of there, you know? And like the other thing was that like after he was shot, there was already a paramedic there. They didn't let them up to assess him after he was shot. They waited until firefighters arrived, which took, I believe, like 15 minutes. Like it took a lot of time, especially because they live around the corner. They live around the corner from the firehouse.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a 2 or 3 minute walk.
Why did they wait for the paramedics to
Yeah, all of it is just like there's just something very suspicious in the way that they like really dehumanized him and
Right.
everything,
Right.
and they didn't even tell the family that he was dead. Some like amateur police officer rookie was basically just like, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." And they're like, "What does that mean?"
Oh God.
You know what I mean? So there was just like a lot of very like unprofessional, like very not well done. Basically, at the end of the day, the protocol is messed up. You know what I
Yes, of
mean? Like
course.
so they got together a task force. There's like very, community leaders who work with like, organizations and have advocated for other, human rights, things like that. And we had a rally on Thursday
Yes.
and they asked me to speak because I've been vocal about Young online. So they asked me to talk about like what happened. And I was like actually the first speaker. So I was like, I'm a little nervous.
Did you watch your live back?
No, not yet.
Okay, because I tried to watch it and I tried to get in and I was watching it and some woman came and she's literally standing
Oh yeah.
right in front
Ron said that.
of
And
your camera. And I was like, I can't call Ed to tell that lady to move because I know this is his phone. And I was just like screaming at my phone. I was like, fucking move. It's literally like the back of her neck. And I'm like, you dumb bitch. Like, you don't see the fucking phone behind you? I know you're there for a good cause, but fucking move. Oh my God. It was so frustrating.
Yeah, and I even like set up my camera for the live right next to, so CBS was there, KCAL 9.
Right.
So I like set it up right next to his camera, thinking that like, oh,
Oh,
it
this is
won't.
official. This no.
Yeah, and Ron was there to like take photos and like
Oh,
make
I
sure
should
that
have
like
called Ron. I
my
didn't know if
camera
Ron was
didn't get
there.
stolen and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said that he was like, yeah, he's like, I noticed a portion of the way through that this lady was standing in front of your camera, and I think you try to move it, right? Yeah. But yeah, it was just like tough because I remember talking to you beforehand. I was like, I'm just really nervous that like I'm gonna get very emotional beforehand, and I just don't want to detract away from the message.
But it's very understandable and very human to be upset and, emotional at something that is so
Yeah.
emotional. I mean, that is a really
Because I think the thing is, especially within the Asian community, because mental health is already so stigmatized. So there's this like idea of like, well, I don't have schizophrenia. My family members don't have schizophrenia, but that's not the thing. Schizophrenia is a very extreme case of mental
sure.
health. But like this can happen to any one of us. You know what I mean? Like dementia as you get older, aging, if you have the privilege of getting old,
Yeah.
this could happen to any of our parents.
Even women like postpartum depression.
Yeah.
These things are just like so not talked about.
Yes.
When I was postpartum with my first daughter, I remember like I had the worst postpartum depression. And it was like I had never thought about killing myself before. I had never thought about killing anybody else before. But like these ideas would like pop into my head and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is going on? And like, I fortunately had people that I could reach out to and talk to, but like, it's a really scary time. And like I've never heard an Asian person, a woman that I know that's older than me or whatever, talk about postpartum depression and that it's a real thing.
Yeah. And like 10 years ago, I was struggling really bad. There's stuff just going on and like I was like drinking a lot, and that like never helps. And one
Sure.
night after drinking, I had like really bad ideas in my head that like I couldn't let out. And I like tried to take my own life. And like I actually had friends visiting at the time, one of whom was a therapist. And she didn't try to do any care. She in fact was like, "Why are you ruining my vacation?" She said to
Oh,
me. And she forced like Ron to call 911 and they put me on a 5150. And like, the police came, it basically was an arrest, you know what I mean? And they like put me in a mental hospital and like it took like 6 hours for the doctor to even see me. And immediately he was like, you don't belong here.
yeah.
He's like, you were drunk. He's like, you had bad ideas. He's like, but you shouldn't be here. And he like immediately let me go. But like, yeah, I mean, like nothing crazy, nothing like escalated with like, Young's case, but like I've been through it and it's a very dehumanizing process. You know what I
It's
mean?
really isolating,
Yeah.
especially if you don't know that there are resources or if you're too afraid of the stigma to reach out to those resources. What will my parents think? My
Yeah.
parents think I'm weak. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm, whatever whatever weak.
burden.
Yeah, weak is
Yeah.
probably one of the ones like when I was young and I'm a crier,
Yeah.
we're all criers. I cry when I'm upset. I cry when I'm angry. I cry sometimes when I'm happy. I cry a lot. And constantly I was told by my parents, like, oh, you're so weak. You're always crying. And I was like, I didn't know, or like, like, stop crying. What are you crying about? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can't control why I'm crying. Like I cry for a multitude of reasons. And it was never like encouraged to just be like, hey, you're having fucking feelings, man. Like let's walk through the feelings.
Right.
Never, and so, I didn't know that there were people out there that actually were allowed to have feelings and talk about feelings and delve deeper into those feelings, or even just to sit with feelings. You know what I mean? Like I was always, stop crying, push it all down. And I was just like, all right, but it's still in there.
Yeah.
It's still in there, and it's going to manifest. And I, of course, didn't know then.
Up. Yeah.
It's going to manifest, and it's going to come out one way or another. And it came out in a lot of really destructive ways as a child and as like a young adult. And had I known then what I know now, as far as like, there are people that you can reach out to. There are, so many different resources, but there can always be more.
Yeah.
There can always be more. And, again, to go back to what you were talking about, it starts with systemic change.
It does.
It has to.
Yeah.
So good work on that.
Yeah,
really,
no,
good
thanks.
Work. It's been really to be able to witness what you've been doing. You've been doing a lot.
Yeah, actually today after this, I'm going to the Department of Mental Health office to file petitions for change and things like that. So it's an ongoing process. We're going to try to schedule more rallies and then make it less about the Asian American community, which also is, at the core of it. But like this affects a lot of marginalized communities.
Most.
And
actually.
In order for systemic change to happen, you have to have the backing of the community, like the whole community, not just the one isolated community. So,
and even communities within communities,
yes.
right? Like LGBTQIA Asian Americans, you know what I mean? Like, or, disenfranchised or poor X, Y's, and Z's. You know what I mean? Like there's so many combinations of marginalizations that do need special attention, you know what I mean? And specialized attention, because it's not a one size fits all. And so to have such, to have people creating those kinds of systemic changes, I think is so important. And I'm really proud of you.
Even Dominic Choi, who's the interim police chief of LAPD, he said to one of our,
Korean?
He's Korean. He even said to one of the leaders in our group that like the police don't want to handle mental health calls.
Of course not.
They don't. And they're not trained to handle it because they're trained with the idea that like anyone can kill you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like anything, and like, yes, Young had a knife, but like anything, even as small as like a water bottle, the police can deem that as a weapon.
A hairbrush, a mascara, a shoe.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like, she even was like, there are instances when people are recording with a phone,
right,
and the police will be like, if you don't put that down, I'm going to assume you're going to attack me with, like that kind of a thing. Cause it's like it's a heavy
physical object.
It's a physical object. So it's like, they're not equipped nor trained or want to handle mental health calls.
They have no desire.
Right. So when people say things like defund the police, we're not saying like eradicate the police.
Right.
But like, why are we funding them upwards of $2-3 billion a year? Why can't we take, if there's a quarter of that are mental health calls that they're calling, why don't we take a quarter of that budget and put it into mental health?
Well, and also, if we reallocate the funds that go to the police and just a portion of it to something else, then that takes it off of the police's hands.
Right.
Isn't that what you want?
Right.
Don't you want to go catch the bad guys and do all the whatever,
murders,
right?
Thieves,
yeah, go do that.
Yeah.
That's what they want, right? I would imagine that's why they joined the police force instead of going into therapeutic, careers. Go. That's great. Don't you want to have people who then they don't have to call you.
Right.
They don't have to call you. If there's a guy sitting on a fucking bridge who wants to jump, they don't have to call you. They can call a task force of people who are trained to quite literally pull somebody from the edge rather than, give them another reason to go.
Right. And it's very clear even after this that even the workers at Department of Mental Health, they need better training.
Of course.
There needs to be better protocols for who gets called to what, you know what I mean? And things like that.
And of course, there's going to be an element of fear involved. You know what I mean? So there's going to have to be elements of, protection and how to be trained in order to protect yourself in those ways. But that's what the money does.
Right.
That's where the money goes. That's what it's for.
And LA keeps saying that they put up these programs with like $2, $3, $4, $5 million funds. I also recently found out that most of those dollars go towards like administrative things. So no programs are actually
You mean
implemented.
administrative salaries?
Pretty much. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so it's like none of those actually even get implemented. It's just this like show and tell thing to like appease the, you know, the public. And it's like it's not even a real thing. So yeah, that happened. And on a different note, remember how
Sorry.
Archie just got his like
Blooper.
Archie just got his face stuck in the thing. He actually loves doing that. But totally on a different side note, totally different energy. But remember last week I went on like that 4th or 5th date with that woman.
Oh
to
yeah.
the DS night market. So like 3 days later, you don't even care about this. 3 days later, she texts me.
Yeah.
And she goes, so I've been thinking about it. And she said, she's like, I feel very uncomfortable with how public facing you are. And I'm pretty sure what happened was that like, so I do believe that maybe she didn't Google me.
Did not
beforehand.
At first, yeah.
But after that date, I was like, yeah, I don't mind. You know, I like my profile is public.
Okay, we're good.
I was like, my profile is public. You know, I was like, you know, it's a little unnerving that people can know so much about me before they even meet me. But I was like, you know, it's there publicly open. So what I'm sure happened was after the date, she might have Googled me, found my social media. Maybe she thought when I was like, oh, you know, I make content. She maybe thought I had like 20, maybe 30,000 followers, which still is a lot, you know, of people you don't know to know you.
She could have thought 500.
Yeah.
You know,
it could be. And maybe then, you know, because like my Instagram's not that much. It's like 20 something thousand, you know, and then maybe she then found my TikTok and was like, oh, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
And, you know, when you first text me that, I was bummed out for you. I really was, because I was like, oh, I know that you were really hopeful and whatever. But then part of me was like, better now.
It is better
right?
now. Yeah.
Better now. And like, I was just like, what's her fucking problem? It's not that big of a deal, you know, but I'm also in very much the same category. But I was talking to my younger sister, who is very private and is very much not about this.
Yeah.
Like when we have to do videos for like the skincare and stuff, she's like, oh my God. Like she really doesn't like it. She just gets really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was surprised she was even in that one video where you guys were eating something.
Yeah, she's always just like, you know, we're very different. Our personalities are very different. And you have to have a certain personality type to not only be in this, but support it.
Yeah.
And like, I think in talking to my sister, she's like, it's a bummer, but like, I get it. Like it is very public.
When she said that, I was thinking of like Nurse John.
Yeah.
You know, who is married and like he hides his wife. Like no one even knows that he's married unless like you pay attention to his ring.
Didn't that other nurse call him out?
Yeah.
That was that thing. That was a thing. We only found out that he was married. Yeah, she, I guess, some nurse called him out and was like, can you believe he's married? And I was like,
yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, she like accused him of
queer
like
baiting.
queer baiting.
I was like, nope.
Like, no, it's just some
characters.
Right. Not only that, but like, it's okay for some people to not be so masculine, whatever that means.
Right. So like automatically she categorized queer men as being a certain personality type and that other people couldn't just be like that. You know, yes. Anyway. Why are we talking about him? You brought him up
because of the comfortability.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I was basically, but he's
like,
but his wife really is also private. So he like really protects that. He doesn't show her face. He doesn't, you know, say anything. He barely even mentions wife here and there. You know what I mean? So like in my mind, I was like, you know, that could happen, but it is true. I even told her, I was like, you know, some people are, but I was like, also like at the end of the day, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. So like, if that's what, you know, you feel is best, you know, I'm going to be supportive of that.
Yeah.
But I was like, I am a little disappointed because I was like, I did enjoy spending time with you. And that was the thing. I was like, remember, I was like, you know, you go on all these dates and you're like, I don't even know if I like you yet. And I was like, I think I was like just starting to like her. You know what I mean? And I think the biggest part of it too was that like, and I get it, a lot of people stay in relationships even though they know it's wrong because it's like putting yourself out there is exhausting.
It's an investment
It is.
too.
And for some of us who are like, even though I am public facing, I'm like very much kind of like a introverty, awkward person, you know? So like putting myself out there that personally, like when I make videos, to me, it doesn't feel that personal. I mean, sure, I share some personal things, but it's like putting yourself out there for other people to like you. That's like a different level of personalness.
Sure. Yes. Personalness, yes.
Yeah, and it's just like it's a lot.
It's a lot. Know? It's a lot. It's a lot for us to do when we do it. So I can imagine what it would be like for somebody who really does not want to participate in that.
Yeah.
What that must feel like.
Sure.
And also, you know, she doesn't know kind of like what that entails for her. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean like I have to like do shit with you and like do fucking couples videos and shit? Like, you know, she doesn't know that. It would
have been fun, but like I don't have to. You know what I mean?
She's like, yeah, that's I'm out. It's not for everybody. This life is not for everybody. And there are some days where I'm like, this life is not for me. You know, so I totally understand.
Yeah,
I get it. Because people will cast judgments on you for everything, for anything, literally everything.
Yeah, like for instance, like you could make a video being like, hey, what you did could be a little detrimental to the Asian community. And as someone who lives in Asia, as a non-Asian person married to an Asian woman with Asian kids, like maybe you should be a little extra aware.
I feel like you're talking about something very specific. And is there something you want to get off your chest?
Not to talk about me so much this episode.
That's fine,
but,
I don't care.
But
the pressure off. I like it.
I was like scrolling through TikTok and I watched this video where,
and honestly, it's not just about you because this actually does involve me just peripherally.
Yes. So like this white creator who makes content, making a lot of Vietnamese food because he's married to a Vietnamese woman, lives in Vietnam. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are like, oh my God, white people care, you know? So I
actually made a video about him.
Yeah,
His name is Chad Kubanoff. And I made a video. I was like, oh, this guy's like doing the work. He was very good at pronouncing the food. He's very authentic to the food. He's very respectful to the food. And this was maybe like 1 or 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, he's a chef and like all this stuff. And I was like, I like his page. I really did.
And for the most part, he does seem very non-problematic until you pay attention to some of the details that fall, the crumbs that fall, you know, that are a little bit hard to find. And this was the video. He started off with like miso hungee, which, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, it's baby talk, but he specifically so like, which is fine. You know what I mean? It could be that, but then someone commented and it wasn't even a scathing comment. It was a very understanding comment. They were like, hey, just so you know, that's not maybe wasn't the best opening hook. Right. You know, like,
especially in the context of your video.
Yes. Like speaking about Asian food, you know what I mean? Right. So it's like he
features his Asian children. I don't know if his wife has ever been in his videos, but like he talks about Asian-ness, Vietnam, being in Vietnam, married to an Asian woman, have Asian kids. Like, you know, there's a lot of
so
Asian
there's just like there was just like this like point of just like you should just be a little bit more aware, you know, because of your content, what you're doing, you know, so either way, but in his video, that response that he made, he was like, I can kind of see where you're going, but like you have to understand sometimes when you overreact and you put in narratives that aren't there. And then he was like, you know, it's kind of baby talk, but he said specifically he was referencing Homer from The Simpsons.
Right.
So then I made the video and I was like, you know, if you're going to gaslight people, you know, publicly, I was like, so I just made this video and I was like, hey man, and I felt like you said it was a little scathing, but I felt like I was being as gentle as I could be.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is like your response to it can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And scathing in the way that like, because here's the thing, people who don't know what miso hungry, where it comes from, or, you know, any derivative of miso hungry, where it comes from, they're going to look at it very differently than those of us who know.
Right.
Like I know where miso hungry comes from, and you explain in your video where miso hungry comes from. Do you want to tell people where it comes from?
Yeah, so it's like, so basically, you know, The Simpsons is very well known for parodizing pop culture.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what that comes from is me so horny, me love you long time from...
That's such a triggering phrase to me.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear it, I get so fucking triggered. I get so upset.
From Full Metal Jacket, which was, you know, a movie about the Vietnamese War. And they basically were like, you know...
The scene is two American... army guys, whatever, by a Vietnamese sex worker, and she comes up and she gives this speech and she says those words, and you know it became this like pop culture thing. Like it's been used in Two Live Crew's music.
Yep.
It's been sampled a million times. People say it all the time. And then it evolved into a lot of different things. Miso, fill in the blank, you know.
And it's true. You know, sometimes kids talk like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But that's the thing is like a lot of people in my comments who were, you know, defending Chad were like, oh, my kid does that, or so they're racist too. And I was like, so you're saying that you hold the same standard for a child who hasn't learned proper English yet with a grown ass man.
Right. Who lives in Vietnam.
Right.
Okay. Like,
so it's not even just like an adjacent Asian thing.
It's not like he's just like some chef in the middle of, he cooks Italian food in, you know, wherever. He is a white man married to a Vietnamese woman in Vietnam, where Me So Horny came from. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, you have to look at it holistically. That's the problem, is like people only look at it for its certain parts. Like, no, you have to look at it from every vantage point.
Yeah. So I told him in the video, you know, I was just trying to be very educational about it, you know, without being like, oh, you fucking like whatever, like,
yeah. So arrogant.
So like so I told him, I was like, you know, a lot of Asian women hear that, and having covered stories and spoken to a lot of Asian women, like I know I've been there when Asian women were told stuff like that. And I've seen the way it affects the women. You know what I mean?
You just saying it makes me viscerally like upset. Like, it viscerally makes me angry.
Yeah. Because almost like every Asian woman, Asian American woman, Asian women in Western countries, specifically in America, there's no way you haven't heard
We've all heard it.
Yeah.
We've all heard it. We've all had people say it to us. And I know that Chad was alluding to like, I don't know. He's just like, it's not what I meant. You know, it's not meant to upset people. Well, I'm an Asian woman, Chad, and I was upset.
Right.
I was upset at the way, not that you just said it, but the way that Chad addressed it. So arrogantly.
That was me.
So like, how dare you? I am beyond reproach.
If
like,
it was just the Miso Hungee video, I would have been like, that was a little iffy, but like, I would have just left it alone. But it was that gaslighting in his response video where he was like, you're looking for things that aren't there. It's like, no. You're ignoring the context of why it's important.
Or how about, maybe you didn't think it was there, but we know it's there and we know how it got there. So why don't you just acknowledge that maybe you did something unknowingly that is harmful to a community that you are not part of. I know you're married to a Vietnamese woman, but you're not Vietnamese, and you're definitely not a woman, and you don't live in the United States, or I'm sure you did, but you know, you are not in the United States where this occurs to us here. So like, for him to just so like, I don't know, like to say like, how dare you? How dare you say these things to me? This is not what I'm, you know, like that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And it was very off-putting to me. I immediately unfollowed.
Yeah. And then like, there was also, and then he like finally a couple days later made a response video to me where he didn't address anything.
Hey bro, why don't we just like sit down and talk about it man to man? It was like
on a podcast or something, you know what I mean? So he basically wanted to be on this podcast or something. I'm not sure. And I was like, I don't know if you think that's a great idea, because like, you don't want to have to take my word for it. Like, we can get a bunch of Asian women together, you know?
I could call in like 6 of them just in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
My sister's down the street.
Yeah. So it's like, and that response video to me really, for me, was like, no, I was right. You know what I mean? Because
really
it was like,
it for me too.
He didn't respond to anything. And then he did this like white-splaining, because like I was responding, like, I get it. Probably shouldn't. I know better than to feed trolls, because like if you feed anything, they're just going to get bigger and they're going to grow. But like when people are being really ignorant or being like, oh, not a big deal, like whatever, I feel the need to stick up for it. You know what I mean? Not for my content, but for the people that I'm trying to avoid this from happening to. So like, I'll just troll them back. I'll match your energy. You know, I'll just say snarky things. Cause like, you know, if you basically acknowledge yourself that like, there's no growth potential in you, then I'm just going to be like, okay, cool. Let me just stomp you down then. You know what I mean? So then he decides in that video to be like, oh, let's talk man to man, which is a weird thing because I'm talking about women. And then he like white-splains to me that
Did he
like
say that? Let's talk man to man.
Didn't he?
Or something very similar.
Something like that, right? And then he white-splains to me about what to do and like, oh, you know, people should know that like engaging in the comments doesn't like go anywhere. It's like, what is happening right now? There is this like air of like elitism, this like arrogance, and it's
like, why are you so resistant to just listening to people who might have a different perspective than you on something that you have platformed yourself from? You've literally platformed yourself as like, I'm the guy who's married to the Vietnamese woman who makes Vietnamese food. Like,
and people say that all the time. They're like, oh my God, he's married to a Vietnamese woman and lives in Vietnam. Like, how can he be racist? Which is crazy because after that video, I have countless DMs from Asian women telling me about how that phrase either affected them, how it made them feel. I even have DMs from people who are like, yeah, no, I am a half Asian, half black woman who was married to a white guy. And it wasn't until like 6-7 years in after the pandemic that all of a sudden he felt comfortable using the N-word towards my daughter who is black. You know what I mean? So it's like, none of the things you're saying make any sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, he lives there. How can he be racist? That's weird. A bunch of white people lived in South Africa. So you're saying apartheid didn't happen?
right.
What does this mean?
Right. Well, so let's do this. If this clip makes it to TikTok, if you're an Asian woman and you're watching this video, why don't you tell us in the comment section, does that phrase, me so hungry, or any derivative of me so hungry, me so horny, me so whatever, if you've ever had that leveraged against you, used against you, said to you in a way that made you uncomfortable that you didn't like, comment that in the comment section. And if you want, you can always tag Chad too.
And the thing is too, is that like, what is there to have a conversation about?
There's no conversation.
I told you everything you needed to
Right.
know. It's not my burden to continue to educate you.
Well, he's clearly so resistant.
Right. That's what I'm
He doesn't give
saying.
a fuck.
He doesn't care. He took it as like some sort of like, jab to his like ego.
And like that's the thing that really is so right. So this is all centered around Chad now,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Has nothing to do with his Asian wife, his Vietnamese specifically wife, his Asian Vietnamese specifically children. You know what I mean? And it's like, why is it not about the community that you have basically, like I said, leveraged your entire platform for? Like, why are they not involved in this conversation at all? Like that to me is the strangest thing is like, oh, well, maybe if you asked, women who were in the survived the Vietnam War, or women who are Asian American women who live in the United States, like maybe if you just had a conversation with some of them, you could maybe understand. But he's so against the idea of being told anything. And that to me was just such a fucking turnoff. Like,
yeah. Because like I'm mutuals with a Vietnamese American woman who advocated and made systemic change around the world against rape.
Are you mutuals with her?
Yeah.
Oh, jealous.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure she can really educate you on
you want to have an education?
fucking
We can
ignorant
get you
are.
fucking educated.
She's basically an expert.
And
on
it's
this.
not even like he didn't have to say, like he didn't have to do anything. It could have just been like, I'll look more into that. That actually, now that you bring it to my attention, could make a lot of sense to a lot of people.
It could have been an easy one sentence. Hey, you know what? I didn't ever think of it that way, and I think I have some learning to do.
And I most definitely don't want people to perceive me as somebody who would use something so hurtful to others so flippantly. I'll try to do better. I'll do better. Okay. So like you're like, you want people to be like, oh, associate you with the idea that you don't care to even learn about the origins of a very triggering, damaging, painful, hurtful, phrase. Like, okay, good to know.
Yeah. And
I can learn how to cook Vietnamese food from somebody else.
Yeah. No.
Maybe somebody who's Vietnamese.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah. Speaking of assholes, lighten this up a little bit. We actually had a couple of write-ins from people for Am I the Assholes? We only have time for like one, as Ron just said off camera. But either way, I love this person already.
I already love this person. Who is this?
Yeah. They wrote, hello, wits and Shibalers.
Yeah.
Parentheses for Ed. I
Catching on,
love
Shibalers.
you.
Let's go.
I don't know why I'm getting emotional.
Because like starting something that could potentially be part of like the zeitgeist is like really exciting.
No, I think it's the amount of like vitriol ignorance to to like the opposite end of the spectrum of support.
Ed feels really validated right now, and he literally has tears in his eyes. So thank you.
Yeah,
You made him,
I've had it's
been a very exhausting emotional.
It has been an exhausting emotional week. First off,
I'm gonna get Shibalers tattooed on me.
That would. I do not endorse that message.
Proud Shibaler.
No,
Shibaler pride.
Tramp stamp Shibalers.
That would be so weird.
Oh,
Okay.
Now happy tears. First, I just want to give a shout out to Ron as a fellow CAD, Korean adoptee.
Aw.
This person is
I
amazing.
love this person
Yeah,
so much.
what an empathetic person. I'm just going to go off the bat and say you're probably not the asshole in this
you're
story.
Fine. You're fine.
Context.
None of this matters. You're fine.
Am I the asshole for not rescinding my formal complaint of discriminatory harassment against my son by his teacher? I don't think so. Sorry for the really long email. Feel free to edit down for the show. Background. My son, we'll call him T, goes to school in a predominantly white neighborhood. As you can imagine, the school district, including teachers and admin, are also mostly white. My son, 8th grader, was between classes in a study hall room hanging out with his friends. His friends, both white, were joking about a water bottle and pretending it was a baby. I don't know. They're middle schoolers.
I don't know. They're middle schoolers.
His one friend asked the other friend, "Hey, is your baby Italian?" The one friend said, "Yeah, of course, because I'm Italian." The other friend then asked if the baby was Asian. He responded, "Yeah, because it's T's baby too." One of the boys joked and said that, "Well, you can tell because you can't see the baby's eyes." No, unfortunately, I don't like the fact that the boys joke like this. However, I also understand that amongst close friends, these jokes can be made and be taken in jest. These boys have been to my house and my son has been to their house, so I feel comfortable with their relationship. We've had several conversations about internalized racism and the long-term effects. Where this story takes a turn is that my son said that the teacher then laughed at the joke. He said that he asked her what was so funny. According to him, he said that she basically said that it was not a big deal and she gets made fun of her blue eyes all of the time.
Oh, yeah. Blue eyes are the butt of so many jokes. Like, literally, I've never heard one.
I've never
joke.
heard. I can't even.
Not one.
No. The only thing I can hear about blue eyes is, "Oh my God, I want my baby to have blue eyes and blonde hair."
Yeah, or like,
how beautiful are those blue eyes? Yeah, like those are the only things I've ever heard.
been made fun of for my blue eyes. Fuck off. You're such a fucking liar. God, good lie.
Yeah. So my son then came home, told his mom, and then told me about the incident. Now, this is not the first time my son has had issues regarding race at his school. The year before, at the end of the year, a girl, white of course, called him a chink out of anger. The girl did not face any type of discipline other than her parents being called.
Really?
Wow. Long story short, I ended up going to a school board meeting, having a lengthy speech there demanding all the school's policy and procedures and meeting several times with the school superintendent. Needless to say, the school was not excited to get a phone call from me about this incident. The school had me submit a formal complaint about the teacher. They asked me to come in and sit down with the teacher. She, of course white, reported that she was trying to address the issue with the boys and that she was attempting to point out that everyone has beautiful features and that they should not make fun of each other that way. What part of I get made fun of having blue eyes? No, you didn't.
So full of shit.
She did apologize and reported that maybe she should not have said anything or maybe addressed it in a better way.
You think?
Then the real reason why they had this sit down with the teacher, they asked if I wanted to continue with the complaint, even though it probably should be, quote, unfounded. I reported to them that no, I want the complaint on record, that
Absolutely.
Too many times marginalized individuals pull their complaints after apologies, and that I would like it to remain on record. Am I the asshole for not pulling my complaint? Also, love the pod. Can't wait to hear more. Also, I would love Ron to come back on the show and give more perspective from a fellow CAD.
Nate, we love you.
Yeah.
You are not the asshole.
No.
I frankly think you could be more of an asshole. I say be more. Like, let's really embrace our inner asshole.
That's called a sphincter.
Don't embrace that. That's for doctors only. No, not at all. Filing a formal complaint and having it in writing. We're talking about like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, systemic change. The only way that you can, be a proponent of systemic change is by going into the system, the school system, the county system, the city systems. Like, you have to do those things. And
even the same thing that I said to Chad, it's about the impact. Intent matters, but the impact matters more.
Right. And, it's like some people might think it's not a big deal. What the teacher said is not a big deal. What the kid said is not a big deal. Fine. But that's just like one pebble, right? And if you keep putting those pebbles in, eventually you have a beach covered in pebbles. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like
Yes.
it's those small
It's the
things that add up.
normalizing.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the exact point to Chad as well.
Right.
Like we
Right.
can't normalize this type of
Right.
behavior because it progresses, it grows, and it turns into something else. And eventually someone will take that and it'll turn into violence at some point.
Right. And so, Nate, to answer your question, no, you are 100% in no way the asshole. And also, it's really important, I think, that your child see how you are standing up, not for them, not just for them, but for the community, for other kids, for yourself even. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
especially even as an adoptee, I'm sure that these things, a lot of the times from what I hear from a lot of adoptees, these things kind of just go unnoticed and unchecked.
But even more so for your son, it
Mhm.
teaches them that like you shouldn't push this stuff down because
Right.
that will lead towards internalized racism.
Right.
And that's going to be a very long road of recovery and
Yeah.
therapy. You know what I mean? And you're teaching them from the get-go, like, no, you don't have to push this stuff.
Don't take that
down.
shit.
Yeah.
You don't have to fucking take that shit. Absolutely not. Why should you have to take that shit? You don't. And at the very least, if they're not going to do anything about it, people are going to at least know about it.
Right.
And that I think is what's really important too. And I think a lot of people, they don't know. Or like whenever I talk about like how much kids like would bully me or like, you know, pull their eyes back at me, like every opportunity they got, or, you know, tell me that my food is whatever the thing is, so many people are like, I had no idea that that happens. I had no idea that kids, you know, were still doing that or still do that to this day. I'm like, that's the problem.
Right.
Is that so many people, parents included, teachers, administrators, you know, teachers on the play yard or whatever, they're just like, oh, you know what? Don't make it a big deal. Let's not.
Yeah.
Okay, but the thing is like, if nobody's making it a big deal, then you know these things go completely unnoticed and just continue to happen. That's the problem. That's the issue with it. Is that nobody wants to say like, hey, you might not think this is a big deal, but when this happens to you, you know, death by 1,000 paper cuts, that it becomes a big fucking deal.
Right.
When is the last straw? When is it enough? When is it, you know, we've heard and said enough about it? Like when, you know, you're not going to if nobody's talking about it. So I think, Nate, you've done the absolute right thing. And I think your kid is probably really proud of you.
Yeah. Very, very proud of you. Because even if they don't see it now, they're going to grow up to be like, yeah, no, I'm proud of who I am because my parents stood up for me.
And one day, you know, when your son, if and when they hear it again, they will stand up for themselves.
Yep.
Say, you know what? My dad has taught me that I don't have to put up with this. And anybody who says and does these things, you know, needs to know that it's not okay.
Yeah.
Even if it is somebody that is in a position of authority, like a teacher or an administrator or, you know, a police officer or, you know, a congressperson, whomever, they need to be held accountable for the actions that they commit. And, you know, whatever those consequences are, even if I don't see the consequences of their actions, I will at least know that I tried.
Right.
And
hopefully if it's on their record, the teacher will be like, well, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be labeled racist. So like it'll enact change. You know what I mean? And that's important. Holding people accountable, Chad, is important.
Or like even this teacher, right? To know that like there's a piece of paper somewhere in the world that has your name on it, that you were tacitly complicit in the racism against another student. That should really, as an educator, really fucking sting. That should at the very least leave a mark on you emotionally. Like, God, did I do that? Did I really do that? And if this person is a decent person, they'll say like, okay, yep, these are the kinds of things I don't want, not on my record, but these are not things that I want, you know, in my life or like, you know what I mean? Like to be associated with me. So I'm going to make the changes necessary. And if and when this ever happens again, I will approach it completely differently.
Yeah.
And maybe that kid who was the one who was made fun of will feel differently about how the situation was handled.
And it's wild to me that people who are in the educational system who knows how these things type of things affect children, how it affects them later in life, their confidence, you know, self-esteem.
Right. How a teacher could laugh at that and not be like, hey guys, that's not cool. We don't do that.
It
is 2024. We have evolved. You know what I mean? Like,
so like the teacher knew well enough later on to be like, no, I was trying to teach him that like, you know, everyone has different features. You knew that. So you knew that, but you laughed anyway.
And that's not laughing at it isn't the way to teach them that.
Right.
Like that's not like the teaching them that people have different features and some of which should be laughed at.
Yeah.
Bitch, You fucked up.
And
You fucked
gaslighting
up.
with a
Sorry.
lie to be like, oh, it's not a big
That's
deal.
not how I meant
That's
it. I
not-
meant like, oh, everybody's beautiful, but that's why we're laughing at you, stupid bitch.
So that's why it's like, that's why it's
Sorry.
insane, because even like this kid knew that it was hurtful.
Yeah, right.
You know what I
Of
mean?
course, it's hurtful.
Right.
Of course, it's hurtful. I'm getting made fun of for my blue eyes. Lying ass bitch.
Yeah.
Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Nobody believes you. Oh my God. Ha ha ha. You have blue eyes. One of the most desirable kinds of features that society has told us is beautiful.
Right.
Stupid.
I've never seen people with blue eyes put on colored contacts
Unless it's like
for a role or
like
something.
committing espionage and you're a spy. Like dress up as
Yeah,
somebody else.
like
You're incognito.
stop sticking out so much. Yeah.
I have to blend. Like,
We don't want people to notice you because your eyes are so
because of your
beautiful.
piercing ice blue eyes.
Yeah.
My husband has blue eyes. They're beautiful, but whatever. Oh, people. And now look, we have a whole day ahead of us.
I want a nap.
But
But instead, I have to go fight for systemic change.
Fight for your rights. Good job, Ed.
But yeah, on that note, thank you for joining us on a very cathartic
I
episode.
want to take a special moment just to thank
of
Nate.
change.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, no,
so much
seriously.
for writing this in. It really means a lot when it's like when we're reading it something like off the internet, like that's one thing. But when we're reading it from somebody who actually took the time to write it in, it really means a lot. It means a lot to me. It's so special.
Especially knowing that it's like so personal
Right.
too, you know?
Yeah.
Also, you're just like so thoughtful.
I
You're my kind
know.
of people.
Good guy, Nate.
Also, tell us to school, please.
Don't.
No, just
Don't. Because then I have to drive there and I'm busy. Like, hi.
Yeah, no, I'm
So I got this from Nate.
yeah.
There's a teacher I want to talk to. I think she teaches the 8th grade.
No, yeah. Definitely. It'll just make it worse. I think harder for you, but yeah. I'm just being very
Ed.
But thank you for joining us on a very cathartic episode. Wow, I did not expect this little guy to pass out.
Maybe he's on the same circadian rhythm as you.
Yeah. Oops. But either way, you can find us on our socials.
You can find me at Sujo1 on TikTok and Instagram.
I'm at Etch a Sketch with a J. This Sleepy Guys at Archie and Cold on Instagram. You can also find the podcast at What in the Shibal, Shibal. We love hearing from you all. Shibalers.
Shibalers.
So write us at What in the Shibal, that's Shibal at gmail.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, know that there is a video version available on YouTube. But if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, and ring that bell. Otherwise, thank you. Oh, also, if you would like to help us keep this podcast sustainable, make sure you join us on our Patreon. Otherwise, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye.